My name is Professor Elmsworth, and I teach herbology here at Witchbrook Academy. I've seen many strange things in my time. I've seen pumpkins grow legs and dance the tango. I've seen mandrakes sing opera. But I had never seen anything quite like the arrival of Danny and Dorian. It was a perfectly normal Tuesday morning. The sun was shining. The gnomes were trimming the grass. I was just about to teach my third years how to properly repot a shrieking snapdragon. Then a great flash of purple light filled the sky above the main courtyard. It was followed by a loud pop that made all the windows rattle in their frames. Everyone rushed outside to see what had happened. There, in the middle of the courtyard, stood two figures. They looked just as surprised as we were. A girl with bright pink hair was helping a boy with dark floppy hair to his feet. They were not wearing our Witchbrook uniforms. Instead, they wore rather old-fashioned, mismatched clothes. They looked around at the towering spires of our school with wide, bewildered eyes. The headmistress, a very stern but fair witch named Miss Nightshade, strode forward. "And who?" she asked, her voice echoing in the sudden silence. "Might you be?" The girl, Danny, spoke up bravely. "We're not entirely sure how we got here," she admitted, which was not the most reassuring start to a first day at a new school. The two of them, we soon learned, were Danny and Dorian White. They explained they were practicing a transportation spell from a very old, dusty book when it all went terribly wrong. One moment they were in their attic, and the next they were in our courtyard. Miss Nightshade, after much thought and a long sip of her chamomile tea, decided they could stay. They had magic, that much was clear, but it was a wild, untamed sort of magic. It was decided they would join my class and the others to learn to control it. It was a most unusual start to the semester, and I had a feeling that things at Witchbrook were about to become very interesting indeed. The other students were fascinated by them. Danny was bubbly and friendly, always asking questions and trying to make friends. Dorian was much quieter. He seemed to carry a weight on his shoulders, and he often looked around as if he expected something dreadful to happen at any moment. They were a strange pair, but there was a deep bond of friendship between them. They always looked out for one another. I gave them each a small sprig of lucky heather for their robes. I had a feeling they were going to need it. Little did I know just how much chaos and adventure these two new students would bring through our ancient school gates. The first few weeks with Danny and Dorian were a whirlwind of magical mishaps. Things at Witchbrook are usually quite orderly. We have rules for a reason, but our new students seemed to attract chaos like a magnet attracts iron filings. In potions class, they were tasked with brewing a simple sleeping draught. It should have been a pale blue and smelled of lavender. Theirs, however, turned a violent shade of orange. It bubbled over the cauldron, and instead of putting things to sleep, it made all the stools in the classroom grow tiny wings and fly around the ceiling. It was quite a sight, I must admit, though the potions master was not amused. My own herbology class was not spared. I asked the students to tend to the giggling pansies, which need to be told a good joke once a day to bloom properly. Dorian, trying to be helpful, accidentally charmed them with a spell from his old book. Instead of giggling, the pansies began to tell terrible, groan-worthy riddles to anyone who walked past. It was very distracting. Meanwhile, Danny's attempt to help a wilting rose bush resulted in the bush growing long, thorny vines that tried to hug everyone who came near. It was a well-meaning but rather prickly gesture. The school groundskeeper had to spend a whole afternoon untangling students from its affectionate branches. Despite the mayhem, a real sense of friendship began to grow. A kind and clever student named Monica took a special interest in Danny and Dorian. She was a top student, always neat and perfect. At first she seemed annoyed by their chaotic magic, but soon she was helping them study in the library. She would show them the proper Witchbrook way to swish a wand or stir a potion. In return, Danny and Dorian showed her a kind of magic that wasn't in any of our textbooks. It was messy and unpredictable, but it was also full of heart and imagination. They started spending all their free time together, a trio of unlikely friends. One afternoon, during a particularly chaotic charms lesson, a spell went wrong and turned a student's hair into a nest of wriggling snakes. Panic erupted. But Dorian, staying calm, remembered a counter-charm from his strange old book. He whispered the words, and the snakes turned back into lovely blonde curls. For the first time, the other students saw that his unusual knowledge could be helpful. He wasn't just a boy who caused accidents, he was a boy who could also fix them. It was a small moment, but it was a turning point. Danny, Dorian and Monica were starting to feel like they truly belonged. As the semester wore on, a strange feeling began to settle over Witchbrook. It started with small things. Books in the library would be found rearranged in odd patterns. Whispers would echo down empty corridors when no one was there. At first we thought it was just the usual school ghosts being mischievous. Our castle is very old, and its spectral residents do get bored from time to time. But then more worrying things began to happen. Important magical artifacts stored in the headmistress's office started to lose their glow. A faint dark energy seemed to be creeping into the very stones of the academy. I noticed it most in my greenhouse. My most sensitive plants, the moon-petal flowers that only bloom in the presence of pure magic, began to wilt. Their silver petals drooped and their light grew dim. No amount of care or magical fertilizer seemed to help. I suspected something was draining the magic from the school, but I couldn't figure out what. I confided my worries in Miss Nightshade. She too had felt the change. She said it felt like a shadow was slowly stretching over our home, a cold and unwelcome presence that we could not see but could definitely feel. Danny, Dorian and Monica noticed it too. They decided to investigate on their own. They spent hours in the library, poring over old school records and maps. Dorian felt a strange pull towards the forbidden section, where the most dangerous and powerful books were kept. He recognized a symbol in one of the old texts that matched one from his own ancient spell book. It was the mark of a dark sorcerer who had tried to take over the school centuries ago. The book said the sorcerer had been defeated, but had sworn to return, using a secret passage hidden somewhere within the academy walls to drain its power. The trio's investigation led them to a startling discovery. The strange events seemed to follow one particular teacher, the new and charming Defense Against Dark Magic professor, Professor Malice. He was popular with the students, always smiling and full of praise. But Monica noticed that he was always nearby when something strange happened. Dorian felt a flicker of dark magic around him whenever he passed. They realized the threat was not some ancient ghost, it was someone inside the school, someone they trusted. The betrayal was a chilling thought. The shadow over Witchbrook had a name, and it was walking among them. The truth came out during the annual Starlight Festival, a night when the school's magic is at its most powerful. The festival was a joyous occasion. The great hall was decorated with floating candles and enchanted stars. Everyone was laughing and eating sweets, but Dorian couldn't shake a feeling of dread. He saw Professor Malice slip away from the celebration, heading towards the old clock tower, which was strictly off-limits. He grabbed Danny and Monica, and they followed him, their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and determination. They knew this was it. The moment of truth had arrived. When they reached the top of the clock tower, they found a scene straight from a nightmare. Professor Malice was no longer smiling. His face was twisted into a cruel sneer. He was standing in the center of a dark, swirling vortex of magic, chanting from a forbidden text. The school's protective enchantments were flickering and dying around him. He was the one draining Witchbrook's power. "You are too late, children," he hissed, his voice no longer warm and friendly, but cold and sharp as ice. "This school's magic will be mine, and then the world's." He was a descendant of the dark sorcerer from the history books, and he was here to finish what his ancestor had started. A great battle began. Professor Malice threw curses of dark energy at them. Monica, ever the brilliant student, quickly cast a powerful shield charm, protecting them from the worst of the attack. Danny, using her brave and creative magic, summoned a flock of birds made of pure light to distract him. It was a chaotic and terrifying fight. The wind howled around the tower, and flashes of red and green light lit up the night sky. The very foundations of the school trembled as the struggle between light and dark magic raged on above the unsuspecting festival-goers below. It was Dorian who saw the key. The professor was drawing power from the great clock itself, which was linked to the magical heart of the school. He knew a spell from his family's book, a dangerous and complicated one that could sever a connection. It was risky, it could backfire terribly, but they had no other choice. Trusting his friends to protect him, Dorian began to chant the ancient words. Danny and Monica stood beside him, their own wands raised, forming a protective barrier of friendship and courage against the darkness that threatened to swallow them all. With Danny and Monica defending him, Dorian focused all his energy on the spell. The words were difficult, a forgotten language that felt strange on his tongue. Professor Malice roared with fury, throwing everything he had at their shield. The light of Monica's charm flickered under the assault, but it held strong. Danny's light bird swirled around the dark sorcerer, pecking and blinding him, giving Dorian the precious seconds he needed. As he spoke the final word of the spell, a brilliant flash of white light erupted from the clock face. The connection was broken. The vortex of dark magic collapsed with a deafening shriek, and Professor Malice was thrown back, his power gone. The battle was over. The dark energy that had plagued the school vanished, and the moon-petal flowers in my greenhouse instantly perked up, their silver light shining brighter than ever before. Miss Nightshade and the other teachers arrived, having finally realized the danger. Professor Malice was taken away, his betrayal exposed to all. Danny, Dorian and Monica stood together on the tower, exhausted but victorious. They hadn't just saved the school. They had proven that their combined strengths, Monica's knowledge, Danny's creativity, and Dorian's unique heritage, made them an unstoppable team. Their friendship had been their most powerful spell. The rest of the year passed peacefully. The story of their bravery spread throughout the school, and they were no longer seen as the strange new students. They were heroes. They continued their studies, though their classroom adventures were now much less chaotic. They had learned to control their magic, and more importantly, they had learned to trust in themselves and in each other. The bond between the three of them was unbreakable, forged in the heat of battle under the light of the festival stars. Witchbrook was safe, and it was thanks to them. When the end of the term arrived, it was time for a difficult farewell. Danny and Dorian had finally found a spell to take them home. It was a bittersweet moment. We held a small party for them in the courtyard, right where they had first appeared. "You will always have a home at Witchbrook," I told them, handing them each a cutting from my bravest, most resilient rosebush. Monica gave them a hug that lasted a very long time. Though they were leaving, we all knew this wasn't really goodbye. True friendship, like true magic, transcends any distance. It is a light that never goes out.